Good morning, people of the earth.
We interrupt our program at the request of the White House. This is a test.
Some very strange events have been taking place recently.
The emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. Furnishing news, official information, and instruction as soon as possible.
Is there a point to all this? Let's find a point. The world is like a ride at an amusement park.
This is only a test.
This is just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love.
A small group of warriors have taken up the fight on your behalf.
It's been activated to keep you informed.
The earth is where we make our stand.
You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful.
People of the earth.
People of Earth.
People of earth.
If you are not,
People.
tune to a station furnishing information for your area.
People, what's going on? What's going on?
Hey,
Hey.
hey, man.
Hey, what's going on?
I don't know.
Are we gonna, I don't know either. Are we going to do a musical start to every episode? Good.
I mean, you're just throwing it out there. So.
I am. I'm throwing it out there like a vibe. I'm throwing it out there, hoping you guys catch it. What's going on, people of Earth? Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Austin Carr. I got my boy Q in here.
Up, peoples.
In the stew. And we're back for episode 2. It's me, Dr. Seuss. High-ass Dr. Seuss. I just landed myself in that rhyme on accident. But we're back at it. It's good to be back here. We had to take a brief hiatus. But we have returned to the Bat Cave. And we're plotting. We're scheming. Today, I wanted to talk about comedy. Because I miss it. God damn it. I miss comedy. I miss being a comedian.
But you're coming back as
Comedy-
getting these opportunities, right?
Comedy is mounting a return, and it's been there. I mean, I think Mark Norman called it methadone comedy, this whole quarantine COVID experience. Like, you can get a little bit of the buzz, but it's just not the same thing. And it's mainly just like, if it's a sheer numbers game, you're not getting out as much, you know?
Yeah.
If you're trying to last long in bed and you're not putting the reps in, that first time you get back out there, you know, you're going to be a little excited, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A
A little quick to the
little
quick
quick on the draw, if you will. Quick to arrive, perhaps, at the punchline.
Cisco kid.
I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's coming back slowly, and it's been around, like, there's Zoom shows and parklet shows and drive-in shows and interdimensional Zoom shows that use VR technology and are happening everywhere and nowhere. But I miss the real thing.
Yeah,
I miss the real deal.
Somebody told me that Zoom shows are just not the business.
Yeah? Have you heard that hot take?
That was a hot take. I think recorded somewhere in Burlingame.
Oh, yes. Yeah, one of my tastiest bits that I've had in the pandemic is woeing and bitching and whining about Zoom. But I mean, it is the worst. It is not. The revolution will not be on Zoom. All right. Can I just say that? We're coming back. We're going to bring comedy back out in the streets. Laughter is essential, you motherfuckers. And we're coming back. All right. Whether you like it or not, we're creeping over. It's been fucking speakeasy comedy. We've been in the Prohibition era now. We've had to go underground, and now we're slowly crawling our way back into the light.
I love it.
I do too. I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see everything coming back and reopening. I miss all the clubs. And so I wanted to start this episode by talking about my favorite club, my home club, my home away from home. That's the place I miss the most, Cobb's Comedy Club. I miss it. Live Nation, get off your fucking ass. Reopen. Indoor is apparently allowed now, I guess. Just get, spray the vaccine. Like, you ever walk into, like, what are those indoor, where they have the plants? Greenhouses?
You mean like Safeway or any supermarket?
Shut up. Yeah, the produce section, where they're misting the cucumbers and the broccoli and all that shit.
Yeah.
Just have that brought to you by Moderna right over the front door and just mist everybody as they walk in, get it in their eyes.
I feel like that's flawed some way.
Of course it is, Quinn. Of course it is. I'm not a scientist. I'm just an idea. I'm just a dreamer. Okay.
Well, you know,
I just want those doors to open back up again. So get everybody vaccinated. Do what you got to do, or just fucking, you know what? Gavin Newsom. Everybody has abandoned us to our own devices. So just open the doors and let's laugh.
dang, we're gonna cut that out.
Are we? No, fuck that guy.
Gavin Newsom.
Fucking California's stepdad, Gavin Newsom. He has all of and yet none of the authority.
I haven't heard that one before. That's good.
Well, there you go.
California stepdad.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I got an email a while ago from Live Nation saying that they were reaching out to all their employees and trying to get a feel for whether or not people would want to come back to work because their intention was that they were going to come back. So hopefully there's good news on the horizon. But I haven't heard any of my sources, any of my canaries in the coal mine chirping.
Well, I'm hoping too, because I really have not been. Oh, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I haven't been to a comedy club before.
Ever?
Ever.
No shit. Oh,
Shit.
well, we got to change that.
I know. I want to go to Cobb's, dude. You used to manage Cobb's, right? So like,
I did not used to. I was one of the managers.
okay, one of the managers.
Let's
of Cobb.
clarify that.
Excuse
I
me.
had, first of all, an absurd amount of. They should have given me zero responsibility, and I I somehow landed on top of a lot of fun responsibility there. So I was the manager of the security staff and did some operations coordination stuff like that, and
Yeah.
kind of did the front of the house and the back of the house, in the green room, and then up in the tech room, and yeah, I was like a utility player. I bounced around a lot and did a bunch of shit. It was fun. I got to do it.
I mean, that doesn't matter though. Like, you got to be part of that
Sure,
system, right?
but on my business card, it would not have said manager of Cobb's Comedy Club. I know,
fair enough.
I know those guys, and they probably wouldn't appreciate me taking their credit. But yeah, I do want to bring you to Cobb's. We got to remedy that. There was a time where I hadn't been to Cobb's. Bring up a picture of Cobb's real quick.
Okay.
Because if you didn't go out looking for it, or like if you didn't know what you were looking for, you might just pass it. It's on Columbus Avenue in San Francisco. And yeah,
There
that's
you
it
go.
right there.
Yep.
So if you're going by on Columbus, it's like right as you're going from North Beach into like the marina and down towards Fisherman's Wharf. And if you didn't see that little marquee right there, you would have no idea there's a huge comedy club in there. Half a block down, there's a place called Bimbo's, and they have a big sign. And they're like an 80s club. Pardon me. But yeah, you would not even. A lot of times I would come up to the city and I had just like passed right by this. And I remember one time I was just walking by with my family. We were walking around in North Beach around Thanksgiving time with my cousins. And it seemed like we just like came around this corner and then those doors were open and we could see that there was a club inside. We were like, oh shit, there's a comedy show. And it was sold out that night, so we didn't get to go. But it was just like, oh, I had no idea this was in my backyard. And it's kind of like that. Like I had been a fan of comedy for so long and yet I never even looked up the comedy clubs in my backyard to go out and see it live.
That was before you'd ever been to a comedy club? Or you have?
That walking by with my family there, yeah, I had never been to a comedy club before then.
Okay.
First comedy club I went to was Rooster Tea Feathers in Sunnyvale. And it's like it's a privately owned smaller club. But like my dad used to talk about, he saw Jerry Seinfeld there back in the day when Jerry was a young up and coming comedian before you would know what that name meant to anybody. And it was just kind of
cool.
Like, one of those clubs that's tucked around in every neighborhood where people are working on their craft, and you might never have known about them if you didn't pop your head in and look at what was going on in there. And that night I saw my best friend Matt took me down to see Brody Stevens. Stephen Brody Stevens. I don't know if you know who that is. I think you just muted me.
Why don't you tell me who that is? You're not. You weren't muted at all. I muted myself.
Oh, I can't hear anything out of my headphones. There we
How
go.
about now?
Now we're good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, Stephen Brody Stevens, he is hilarious, and unfortunately passed away, is no longer with us. But was what is like the template for a comics comic. If you were going to talk about, I don't know if that term means anything to you, but for people that don't understand what that term means, is going out as a stand-up comedian, as you've experienced a small taste of in producing this episode, requires a lot of repetition and a lot of, you prep the words. They might work out sometimes. That you're trying things, you're failing, you're learning, but it's kind of the same thing to a certain degree, day in and day out, with minor adjustments. Obviously, if you're doing the same thing every day, it's like, what is that? Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So it's very close to that. But, Brody kind of took that to an extreme where he would have like a bag full of bits that he would do kind of over and over and over again that were defined as his act, that were kind of, it felt like fundamentally there to poke fun for the comedians in the back of the room at the process, the whole charade and facade of it all. And it was kind of like a fourth wall break moment, but also it was a legitimate attempt at running these jokes, because they were great jokes, and it wasn't like they were bombing or failing, but he would bomb spectacularly and have this weird kind of interrogational energy with the audience. I remember when we were sitting in like the back of the club, and that night specifically, the front section, the VIP section of the club, had been rented out by like a party of Indian businessmen and businesswomen. So it was like businessmen and businesswomen, and there was a language barrier, and clearly they were showing up expecting like a Jerry Seinfeld kind of guy, and not someone who was going to be making kind of a mockery of the process. Not a mockery of the process, but like,
it was something that people hadn't seen before in comedy, is what you're saying, and it was a
yes.
process that was new and people didn't understand.
Well, what people aren't used to seeing is when that fourth wall breaks, and when you start interacting with the audience genuinely, not just as a performer, and like delivering a scripted bit. And so he would like deliver these scripted bits, but then he would be like, oh, come on, it's not getting anything. You, crossed arms negative. You, come on, you can't do that to me. I'm a good guy. And he would just kind of like rile up the room.
Okay, I see.
In a funny way, where if it was happening to you, you didn't necessarily understand what was happening to you, but the people around you were all aware of kind of what was happening. And then he would talk about like, remember he went out to his car and got his drumsticks and started like doing a drum solo on someone's tape. It was just like, he was just a wild experimental guy. And that was such an interesting first live comedy show to go to. Because like, as a comedy fan, and as someone who like looks up to comedians all of your life, you listen to the albums, you watch the TV spots and the specials and all of their roles in movies, and maybe even read their books to try to. And when you get to that point of fandom and you're reading the books, it's because you're trying to find all of the little cracks, all of the stories that fall in the cracks of like the success story. You get the overt picture of success just by looking at someone's career and seeing what they've done as far as the products they put out. But it's all the little things, all the little moments that fall between the cracks that you're looking for. And that's what this experience kind of opened up for me, was when I was at the Comedy Club live, seeing stand-up live for the first time. It wasn't this like recorded, edited, perfected product. It was this raw, unique, and in that way intimately special moment, because it was only shared by the people in that room. And that's where like it went from me being a fan of comedy and wanting to do comedy and wanting to be involved in like writing or being in sketches or whatever the fuck it was, just loving comedy. That was like a moment of understanding live comedy as a different thing entirely. It's like, you can, I don't know, you can meet someone on the greatest day of their lives, and they're clean shaven and well dressed, and that's one first impression. Or you can like see somebody day in and day out and truly get to know them. And that's like, after seeing that performance, I was like, okay, I've seen stand-up specials, I've heard comedy albums, I want to see these moments. I want to see like all of those little, not throwaway nights, but footsteps in the journey that cumulatively you're gaining all this kind of progress and perspective from. But like, I don't know, it's those kind of nights where you don't see the changes happening right in front of you and you just can't see it, all that growth, all that. So I was just like really intrigued by how different live comedy was versus pre-recorded comedy.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was my first live stand-up experience, and I was like, I gotta get more of this. And so I just started looking up all the clubs in my area, and so it was like San Jose Improv. They had Rooster Teeth Feathers in Sunnyvale. You've got Sacramento Punchline. You've got San Francisco Punchline. You've got Cobb's. Really nothing in Oakland. Now there's kind of some more stuff opening up, and there's, you know, stuff on the perimeter of even the names that I just said, but those were kind of like the established names. And for me in my area immediately, pardon me, it was Cobb's and the Punchline in San Francisco. So I was like, okay, I gotta work my way up there. And I had heard about the Punchline, obviously, because every great comedian talks about the Punchline. I had heard the name Cobb's thrown around, but I never really knew like what people were talking about or like where that place was or like that it was, you know. I remembered hearing it, but I was like, it didn't really click for me until I physically walked by it and saw it. But I'd heard about the Punchline, so I was like, okay, that's the place I got to go next. So I think it was my fiance at the time and an old childhood friend of mine and her friend. We all went out to the Punchline one night to their Sunday showcase. And that was really interesting because we didn't know that like Sundays are like local nights. It's for all the up and coming comedians. And so we got like a front row seat kind of off to the side and didn't know that we were like literally, like looking back now, I know exactly where we were sitting in the club because I've been in there every single night, and that we were like right literally amongst all the comedians, sitting around them watching each other and watching one of their peers get up and audition and perform on this Sunday showcase night where you're trying to go from a local comedian to someone who's passed at the comedy club and a paid regular. And I remember watching all of these young comics and being like, I had no idea these people were right in my city. It's so fucking cool. And like you like, as a comedy fan growing up, I always looked at all these people like George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Robin Williams. And even though some of them were from, like Robin was from San Francisco, and, you know, you could find pretty much all those guys in LA at one time or another, it felt like they were on fucking Mount Olympus, you know? And like, that was just, there was somewhere an island or a mountain where funny people were. Yeah.
I mean, to compare it to music, it's like seeing artists
Yeah.
from Oakland. Like I mean, I like E40,
Yeah.
as controversial as that is, but I saw E40 and I was
Is that
like,
controversial now?
No, people just don't like E40, I guess.
Oh.
But I guess I hang out with a lot of people from LA, so they just don't get it. But
Did a motherfucker.
yeah, a blue blow.
Blah.
Got a chicken and a biscuit. But yeah, just to kind of like, you know, throw my experience, like just seeing E40 being like he lives here.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a cool moment to connect with your city and your artist.
Yeah.
You know, kind of community. So
Exactly. That word community. And I was like, okay, now I understand that it's not just like, you know, one day you're anointed or you're stricken by lightning or picked out of a crowd or that little mechanical arm in the arcade games that comes down and just pulls one up and then drops it in. I understood now that it was like an ecosystem and a community, and these were the people that were my neighbors that lived all around me and that I would have no idea unless I came and watched them on their stage doing their thing. And I was like, this is fucking rad. And yeah, it just was like so unobtainable to me before all this. So I never really considered myself even following that path. And I was also, as I mentioned, engaged and at one point married. And so I was living a life for somebody else at a certain point and trying to, like, you know, build a structured, stable, reliable life. And then, you know, things happen, as they say. And I found myself at a turning point, willing to take some risks. And during that Great Depression era and that dip in my life, I hit up my buddy and I was like, I need to go back to a comedy club. I want to go laugh again. You know, my life has been hard. I need to find some levity. I need to not think about my shit for a minute. And
so you were drawn to that in a moment where you were kind of
100%
low.
And I was like, in the back of my mind, I wanted to go up there like a detective and kind of like case the joint and get an idea for what was going on, just like I had done at Roosters and the Punchline. I wanted to go to Cobb's and get a feel for it, and also just like see how far away it felt again, you know, because for that moment when I was at the Punchline, it felt like, you know, it didn't feel like Mount Olympus. It felt like right around the corner.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I need to laugh. I believe in the power of comedy, and I think it can help me right now. And I went with my buddy and his girlfriend, and I was third wheeling after going through a divorce, which is like, I was ordering drinks left and right. It's just fucking hating
setting you up.
hating it from the outside. But then once we got into the club, it was no longer about that kind of equation anymore. I was just transfixed on this experience. And I remember we went and we saw Nikki Glazer, and she was killing and fucking hilarious. My buddy and his girlfriend were laughing. And I just remember it's like one of those moments where you're in the room and you're present, but you're also kind of watching it from on your shoulder. And I was watching me sitting there, and then I started watching my friend and his girlfriend and how much they were laughing and having like a fun date night, even though their fucking shitty divorced ass friend is tagging along. And I'm watching the whole room just kind of coming together over these ideas that are being presented to them. I'm watching the wave of relief crash over them, and people kind of, just like I am in that moment shedding the weight that I brought into that club, I'm watching these people shed that weight, you know. And just as I'm no longer thinking about my divorce and my grandfather passing and dropping out of comedy or dropping out of college because I want to start pursuing comedy, and all of these like fucking hard ass heavy things and risk factors in my life, or whatever the fuck you want to call them, like I wasn't thinking about them until I reminded myself, you know, and kind of snapped myself out of the illusion. But I was aware of the illusion for just like a moment, and I was like, whoa, you know. And I was watching it happen to other people as well. And then I was watching Nikki on stage, the performer. I was watching kind of how it was affecting them, the confidence that it brought to bring people on board with your perspective, and then kind of the insecurity when it felt like people were moving away, and the way it kind of just became like a microcosm of how we manage relationships in our lives. I don't know. It was a really wild drunk night where I was just like sitting back.
I get that moment though. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, I've never been to a comedy club, but I've been to clubs, and it is kind of an ecosystem of different types of connections. And that's kind of cool that you had that moment that night, even when you were third wheeling, and it could have been a bad night. It was like
100%. And I went there, I mean, in the shittiest of moods and the shittiest of mentalities, and like the darkest place in my life. And I came out of that one show with like the first seed of hope, without even really knowing it, but kind of knowing it. And it just started to grow. Other seeds had already been planted, but that one was for sure influential for me, because I've always wanted to do something in my life that was like, you know, had a positive impact. And I was always making my friends laugh. I was always making my teachers laugh, my parents laugh. It felt like my role in life had always been like the comedic relief. And I hadn't really put together in my mind that was a life skill or like a tool that I could use. I understood that it was a tool I could use to get me out of trouble. That was like the first way I was like, okay, I'm funny, or like I can be funny and use it strategically. And it was just kind of using my silver tongue for nefarious purposes at that point, and getting myself out of trouble and shit like that. But you know, then that night I was like, it just kind of, my perspective shifted, and I understood that these are people that understood that they had that talent and could use it in like an alchemist. You know, you're taking something that is one thing and turning it into another by just shifting its properties or whatever the fuck. You know, alchemy is not an actual science, but just that idea of taking something and changing it into something else. And so you're taking people's anxieties, fears, woes, stresses,
so was
common embarrassing occurrences, and then alchemizing it into something that is lighter and more comedic and insightful in that way.
Would you say that this was kind of a moment where you felt that you wanted to do this, or you felt that you could do this? Like, was this a breakthrough where you noticed how it affected you and you wanted to do that, or you're like, I can do this?
I had felt both of those things before. This night showed me how. I knew that I wanted to, and then I thought that I could. You never really know that you can. I mean, even like you hear people talking about that phrase, imposter syndrome. Even when things are going, I think, even when things are going the best for any level of person in any sort of kind of thing where you're elevating yourself, you're going to feel like, can I really do this? And you're going to have those little moments of self-doubt. But it was more like that night showed me how I could do it a little bit, like mechanically, and how also I could get myself from the point of being someone who loves comedy and understands the power of comedy to then someone who is able to use it and wield it. Because like I learned, like you said, how and could, or sorry, what was your question exactly?
Well, like, the way that I kind of heard that was you went to the comedy club right on this night where everything was happening after all this shit had happened, and you felt that the community in the comedy club was something that gave you relief, something that helped you, right? And I guess as an artist, as somebody who's creative, you know that you like to do something, but there is a moment where you decide to choose that path. And I was wondering if that was that moment for you.
They were all three kind of these moments for me. And I'll tell you why. Is like I kind of said earlier, I had found out in my life just with making my friends laugh, and like we used to do our own version of SNL when we were kids and do little sketches and try to make each other laugh while our parents were hanging out at dinner parties and shit like that. And I would do, I was always trying to make people laugh, my family, whatever. And so I understood that. I just never saw it as like a viable career option or like something that you could just do with your life. I thought people told you that you do it with your life, not you decide to do it with your life.
Right.
So
the biggest misunderstanding ever.
100%. It's just you. It's a decision, and you decide, and you put your mind to it. But for me, it was like those three moments impacted me because, one, my first live comedy show, I saw one of the most unique live stand-up artists with Brody Stevens, and someone that throughout looking at his career, you could understand deriving your own definition of success. You could also see the overt effects of placing all of your hopes and dreams on Hollywood's definition of success and social media's definition of success and the entertainment industry and all that. But you could some people could say that he never made it. Some people could say that he made it into Hangover, Hangover 1, Hangover 2, and all of these other little parts, and was a touring comedian and paid regular at the Comedy Store. And so like, even being this kind of avant-garde, unique guy that not everybody got, you could carve out a corner of the comedy community for yourself as a unique performer. It's like Ben and Jerry's. There's a reason there's 32 flavors or whatever the fuck, however many flavors they have now.
Right.
It's like not everybody wants just vanilla and chocolate, or pistachio or whatever the fuck you want to say. Like, there's room for a lot of different voices in comedy, just like in music and in art and in all forms of art. So that experience for me was like, okay, even if you're not Jerry Seinfeld, you can find your own voice and develop your own comedic perspective and find your own way. And then that second event at the Punchline, it showed me that while there is an element of show business that feels like that machine that comes and selects you and pulls you up and says you are chosen, you're going to succeed, there's also a collaborative, communal aspect of it where you have a group of peers that are rooting for, or sometimes against you, but there's a we're all in it together kind of a thing. Like at the end of the day, there's a barracks that all the Marines go back to, and it's kind of like, we're in the shit. But also it showed me that there is an outlineable process to go from, just someone who thinks that they're funny, or someone that has a dream, or someone that, wants to do something to then actually going out and doing it. And there's like a roadmap. And so I was like, okay, it's not just this not arbitrary, but this kind of all-encompassing selection process or looming.
Ominous.
There you go. That's a good word.
So when did you start actually writing jokes then? I mean, was this like, have you been writing jokes like most of your life, or?
I started paying attention to the things that made people laugh when I was in like high school.
Okay.
So I had written little skits and like done little ditties and numbers with some of my friends when I was in like 4th grade and things like that, but none of it was really like structured or like, filed away or kept or worked on or improved upon. It was all just little things that like I thought would be fun in that moment or in that period of time.
But you started collecting.
I started like working at writing jokes. I started the mental collection in high school. I pay attention to the things I said, the things that I did, the things that happened in people's lives that were just like kind of universally funny. And started thinking about like premises and scenarios and things like that. And then in college, I would keep doing that. And in college, I was a creative writing major. So I started to try to inject comedy into everything that I was writing, even if it wasn't comedic.
Right.
And I would try to be funny in all of my papers and all my essays and shit in high school and college, and it would piss my teachers off, and they'd be like, I appreciate what you're doing here, but
that's not what I was asking for.
yeah,
all.
exactly. But I first started writing jokes after my divorce. I remember my friends came over, and it was kind of like a woe is me kind of a day, and they were all expecting me to be like, a recently divorced young male. And I said something, I can't even remember what it was, but it made him laugh. And it was just like, I forget what it was about the divorce, but it was one of those thoughts. I said to them, I went back and wrote it down, and that ended up leading to my first set about that, because it was like that idea of church giggles, like where you're supposed to be serious, but you can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was a pretty grim mood, and then got a good laugh. And so I was like, okay, if I can take something that you're not supposed to laugh at and make you laugh at it, maybe that'll make me feel less defined by this, shitty thing that happened in my life that I thought people were going to, Anyway, I thought it was going to be a weapon that was used against me, and I was able to like mold it into armor. And I learned that in that moment. And so I was like, when I started writing jokes, I was like, interesting. I don't know. It was just another kind of perspective shift for me.
That's cool.
But that was, it was an interesting moment. And like, to tie it back into that third experience at Cobb's, and what started my journey at Cobb's is, I lived with my grandfather most of my life, and he had recently passed away. And in our last conversation, he was like, I know you want to change the world, and I know you want to do something big, but just understand that you can change the world one person at a time, and you can change the world for that one person, and that those things can then add up and accumulate, and you might be surprised at the kind of impact you can have if I can speak, cumulatively over time. Cumulatively over time.
Accumulation.
Accumulation.
Cumulonimbus.
The cumulonimbus.
There it is.
I don't know what that is. A type of cloud?
It's a cloud.
Okay,
It's a
there we
rain
go.
cloud, I believe.
There we go. All right. That was in there. Little 6th grade earth science came back around. All right. Anyway.
Something. At least I retained something. Question for you, though.
Yeah.
Or sorry to interrupt your, that story, but I was just wondering what you were thinking.
That fucking bullshit.
No, not at all. Not at all. Beautiful story. I loved it. Right? Real. But I'm just wondering what you were, he was telling you about how he knows you're ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And what were you thinking about in that moment?
Oh, I mean, my family probably thought that I was going to end up writing like some sort of manifesto and being like kind of a weird fringe political mind that was like really hippie and like futurist and populist and kind of like John Lennon 2.0 or something like that. I don't know. I feel like they thought I wanted to make some big grand statement, which sure, yeah. I also wanted to be an astronaut, and I wanted to go to Mars, and I was like, I was transfixed on that idea of that kind of a gesture being a unification factor for people, you know?
Right.
And so those kinds of thoughts were encompassing a lot of our final discussions. And this was also going into, 2015 is when he passed, and it was like right when Donald Trump was entering the political conversation as well in a larger scale. And so there was, just a lot of heightened voices in the household, we'll say, and opinions coming out, and me certainly wielding my liberal arts education like a little dumbass lightsaber around the house, and him being like, that's not fucking real. But yeah, man, I talked a lot about people needing to go to space and realizing that they're all in this together, and just in general, kind of talking in terms of unifying people. And he was the first guy to say, in a nutshell, with that comment, you don't have to fucking go to space, dummy. You can create a space creatively, idealistically, with your words, with comedy. Or he didn't give me that roadmap, but he just said, try changing one person at a time.
Yeah, start small.
And I was like, well, I'm going to raise you to a room of people at a time. And if I can get a couple people in that room that agree with me, then that's a win,
Okay.
And so I started with this intention of, I'm going to start writing jokes that are about taking negative things and turning them into positive things, and trying to find that kind of just positive overtone, undertone, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and be real, talk about divorce, death, fucking dumb shit. Also, be self-deprecating, but not be like, I tried to pivot from being a young, like, not young radical, but like, I had a lot of political opinions, and I came from a family that, like, both my grandparents were in the military. They didn't, like, actively serve in wartime, but, they believe in
there's an ideology.
Yeah, there's a certain cloth that you're cut from, and it's very difficult for them to understand that there's a larger conversation about patriotism to your species rather than just your nation. Anyway, getting off topic.
Yeah.
But
fast forward to your first show. To what was your first show like?
Well, I don't even want to talk about my first show yet. I want to talk about my time as a comedy club employee, because that's like an entirely different thing.
Okay, we can go down that rabbit hole later then.
Yeah, 100%. We will talk about my stand-up a lot, and people will hopefully have an opportunity to come out and see it. But talking about being a comedy club employee, being a door guy, and all the shit that goes on is, I don't know, not necessarily out there as much. A lot of people have that first set story, and we can get into that. But I spent 2-3 years, I think. By the end of it, it was 3 years at Cobb's, and it was like I will never be able to have a regular job after working at a comedy club. Just fucking some of the most fun nights of my life.
So how did you start there then?
That night at the Nikki Glaser show, I was like, this is it. And now I need to find out how to get in here. And I was like, how can I, before I start to approach comedy as a performer, how can I continue to learn as a fly on the wall? And because I didn't have the balls to go right out to an open mic. I'll admit it. I was like, I want to learn more. I want to be like a student of the game and be a fly on the wall in the dojo for a minute. And so after that show, I was like, I grabbed one of their calendars on the way out of the door, and I was like, we need to come back. And I think it was like the next weekend. Daryl Hammond was playing. He was an SNL cast member.
I do know Daryl Hammond.
Yeah, he used to be Bill Clinton. He had a good Clinton. And now I guess Daryl Hammond does the SNL announcer voice guy, because that guy passed away.
Oh, really?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
with musical guest Jeremy Renner.
That was great.
I don't know if you know who Jeremy Renner is. He's the guy that played Hawkeye in the Avengers.
Oh yeah,
And then he came out with a song.
Did he really?
You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that at all.
The dumbest fucking. You're at the height of your popularity. You were Hawkeye in the Avengers. Maybe the biggest bitch ass Avenger.
There were a
You're
lot
Hawkeye.
of people in the Avengers too, right?
But you leveraged that into trying to drop a single.
Okay, what genre?
And it was
is
not good. I think it was like country pop.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was no Feel Like I Do Vin Diesel, you know?
Yeah, well, that was pretty bad.
Still better than Jeremy Renner. But anyway,
okay, I got to hear that then.
so that next weekend, Daryl Hammond was playing, and I got my buddy to come back with me. And during the break between the early show and the late show, because usually clubs will do 2 shows a night, I slipped over to the bar, and I was like, can I talk to a manager? They probably thought that I was fucking gonna, like, some dumb kid that was gonna complain about my bill or something. So they like kind of started to like shuffle me around for a minute, and then I started to see who people were going to. So I was like, okay, that's the manager. And I went over and I was like, yo. And he was a short little guy, and I kind of like towered over him, not intentionally, but I was like, do you guys have a job? And he's like, have you ever worked security? And I was like, nope. And he's like, do you want to? And I was like, yep.
Oh, sick.
And
on the spot.
He's like, all right, come back Wednesday. This was like a Saturday or something like that. And I was like, fuck yeah. And so I think I literally just got the job because I was tall.
Still got the job, man.
I was tall. I had a smile on, and I wasn't too drunk. And somehow I managed to get that job. And honestly, that moment fucking changed my life. Shout out to Marcus Glass.
Yeah, that had to
My
feel
manager.
That had to feel great.
Well, that was just like fundamentally right there. My life took a tone shift where it was now tomorrow. I'm not just going to be fucking sitting here thinking about all this bullshit. Tomorrow night or Wednesday night, I'm going to be going to my first day on the job at a comedy club. And I was fucking ecstatic. So that was super fucking cool. I'm trying to remember the first show. I think it was the guys from Super Troopers.
Oh yeah.
They did a little stand-up routine. They came like 3 or 4 times over the course of me working there. But they were the first show. They were there on the Wednesday, Thursday, and then Brian Posehn was there that Friday. But anyway, I was just like, oh my God, like the first week, it was already people that I knew from this movie that I loved, Super Troopers. And then it was Brian Posehn, this comedian that I had heard of, a San Francisco legend, coming through headlining. It was just wild to watch my first headliner weekend too, because that's another thing. Like, this was exactly why I got the job, is I wanted to be able to be a student of the game and like be the little ball boy with the, toweling off the court and watching Jordan slam a dunk.
Yeah.
And I got to watch every single comedian that came through there come in with their set on Thursday night, their adjustments Friday night, and then slam dunk it Saturday night. Pretty much. That was kind of the formula that it started to follow, is that people would come in, they'd be trying something new on a Thursday. Friday, early show would be fucking the most exciting one for them, because they'd be like, I'm here, it's Friday, it's the weekend. Friday late shows, people are always fucking drunk. And so Friday late shows ended up being shit shows. And like, people still work on Friday. So it's like, it's the weekend, but by the time that 10 p.m. rolls around, if the show's running late and it's 10:30, people are pissed.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you get people that are like just mad about how much they're having to pay for their bill, and they would be shitty on Friday nights. But Saturday nights were always like magic. That's like, so it was just so wild to watch all the little adjustments that went into that too, and how someone's set on that last show of Saturday night might be entirely different to the first show on Thursday night, and I think the coolest person I ever saw as far as changing up their act from show to show was, do you know who Godfrey is?
Godfrey. I've heard it before. I've heard that before.
Not Gilbert Godfrey. Not the parrot from Aladdin.
Ah,
I can't even do his voice, but
that's who I was thinking of.
Godfrey is a comedian from New York, and he came in and he did, I think, 8 shows. So it was like Thursday 2 shows, Friday 2 shows, Saturday 2 shows, Sunday 2 shows. Each hour was different. So that's a fucking 8 hours of unique stand-up in a week, in a weekend. That's nuts. You talk about people that are going out and coming out with a new hour every year, or like trying to come up with a new special every year. He had 8 different hours that he could then be like, you know what? I like that one. It was fucking nuts. And I'm sure there was some crossover and little bits of the same shit here and there. But yeah, it was just wild to now be inside the belly of the beast and to be watching kind of all the mechanisms and how the sausage was made, kind of. So I guess the coolest way to start talking about Cobb's would be like, I don't know, it's just such a unique building too. First of all, like, I remember my first week there, you have to go right when you walk in those front doors. There's a little like sheet where people take pictures in front of that has like our logo a bunch of times.
Yeah,
and,
like a little backdrop.
And you pull that up and it's a fucking staircase that goes downstairs and you're like, what the fuck? It's like,
whoa, that's sick.
It's like Alice in Wonderland type shit, you know? And so you pull back this thing and then all of a sudden you're going down this staircase and now you're in a basement. And it's it's literally the size of the comedy club above it, below it. So you wouldn't even know because they don't use it currently. It's not up to like ADA code and some shit like that. So they haven't had anything down there, but this whole place used to be a jazz club. And so they would have like, you know, different showrooms and then a speakeasy bar downstairs. They would do like the after hours shit.
So you wouldn't know that there's a door there, right? It's a wall that goes up.
Most people have no idea.
Okay.
Because it literally is only like the employee space. It's like storage for the original owner. Tom Sawyer has a bunch of shit down there that we're not allowed to touch until a certain year.
Whoa,
and then it's like our little employee lounge area where we clock in. But what's really fucking cool is because the building is structured that way, you can go down one staircase and then pop up on another side of the building. There's like 4 little entry points that it's like catacomby. So you can just like go down through the front and then pop up behind the back bar and then like go down and then pop up in the kitchen.
That sounds like comedy opportunities there.
Oh my God. I mean, first of all, the amount of times that I tricked people into thinking that I fell down the stairs and got them to come running. Oh my God. I miss that place so much. All the antics, all the hijinks. That's one part that I got to get to is just the staff at the comedy club too. But yeah, the building, the layout was so fucking cool. It's 3 stories. So you've got that basement, you've got the showroom floor, the box office, the back bar, and then upstairs is the green room. And the green room was so fucking sick. It's so fun to go like hang out in after the shows and like, you know, check out before I would clock out and be like, oh my God, it was going down in here.
So you're there, so you're working security and
yeah,
you're just kind of exploring.
So, I mean, my first job was as a door guy. What you would do is you would search people as they come in, stamp them for their IDs. There's also like an ushering element to it where you seat people and you know, everyone has their assigned seats and shit like that. And then once the show's going on, you're kind of just like roaming and patrolling and making sure people aren't on their phones recording, they're not heckling, doing any dumb shit or sneaking. Always people are sneaking booze in, just like concerts. So you got to like, you know, be on the watch for that shit.
Because the booze is probably too expensive.
You know, it's a business.
Yeah.
And then occasionally you'd have to get up on the ladder and like change the marquee, all the signs and the lettering and all that shit. But during all those little duties, there was a lot of opportunities to like go downstairs, to like bring the ladder back downstairs. Or if you're counting up the room, you go to one side, count up all the people over here, and then go up to the other side.
That's pretty cool. So it's kind of like your little secret security tunnel that you can
go down there. It's like the fucking French catacombs.
Yeah.
It's just bodies of old comedians. But no, dude, it was fun to just run around down there. We had at one point a shooting range for BB guns down there.
Oh, so this is a serious space then. There's a lot.
A comedy club on top of a comedy club that wasn't being used.
It's a comedy club on top of a comedy club.
A double layer comedy club, mate. I'm telling you, it was massive.
That sounds Dutch. Not the accent, but the
The setup.
The setup.
It was like our Comedy Store. The Comedy Store is a lot like that. It has 3 levels, and so
You got to take me to Cobb sometime then, dude.
100%.
Man, that sounds sick. I love that.
Well, I fell in love with it immediately because I was like, I love this place for what it is, but I can see what it could become, which it would be kind of the Northern California Comedy Store. You get a second room going down there, and you have like 150 people maximum down there, so it's like fucking tight and intimate. And then upstairs you have the 400 or 500 people, and then oh, dude. So it's just, yeah, I gotta take you. It's so fucking fun. But yeah, that was the job at first. It was just being the door guy, and part of the fun with that was, you know, before I get into the comedy side of it, the first thing that I also fell in love with, obviously, was the staff. I would oftentimes in quarantine, I have referred to it as our island of misfit toys, and about how much I miss it, and keeping in touch with all my other, you know, misfits, and it was just like a really, really interesting collection of people that you wouldn't find at any other job, any other, like, you know, fucking Starbucks or Pete's or fucking a retail job or some office job. You know, you're going to have really fun and interesting personalities anywhere you go, but it's like a specific type of person that gravitates to a comedy club, which is like, you know, I don't want to use any terms that are too disparaging, but it was definitely like people that were at a pivot point in their lives, that were like taking chances and assessing the world.
That's what I was going to say, because comedy can push borders sometimes and can cross or ride lines, right? So it's kind of people who embrace that 100%. Ideology.
And not everybody there, a lot of people there were there because they loved comedy and either wanted to be involved with it in one kind of a way or wanted to be a comedian. But not everybody there loved comedy, which is, I always thought was interesting. But then you think, like, you know, not everybody that works at fucking Bed Bath & Beyond is crazy about duvets. For some people, it's just a job, you know? But a lot of the people were, I guess, risk takers and dreamers is like the way that I would describe them, is they were not sidelining ourselves from the real world, but just like entering into this alternate dimension where the rules didn't apply, and where we could come in and talk about all sorts of shit, be our true unfiltered selves, whether it was gross or glorious, and just like kind of, I don't know, bond over the shit that brought us there and all the shit that we wanted to do going forward. But it was also like every single night we were laughing. And I think even if people don't want to admit it, we all needed that, you know?
Yeah.
And you could call it the island of misfit toys. You could also call it the island of broken toys. I think a lot of people were there because they needed healing. And it had a really interesting healing effect to it. There were times where it didn't feel that great and it was a little negative, and then there were like some staff change-ups and shifts. And
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, on Saturday nights,
yeah,
like, what was the energy like in there?
So about like for the first 3 months I was working there, I was still living at home with my folks. And so immediately after work, I would drive back home, and I would just like sit in my room and be like, this was fucking wild. Like, that was so much fun. And I would tell all my friends about what a fucking wild night I just had. But I wasn't really like taking part, you know. I had to go home, and I was like, at a certain point, because they would all go just at the end of the block down Columbus from these doors, there was a little dive bar called La Rocca's, and La Rocca's became our like home away from home, where as soon as we were off work, we would go over to La Rocca's, and it was like Cheers, and they all knew us and we all knew them. And
all the employees from Cobb's, right?
All the employees from Cobb's, all the employees from the bar, all the guys from the liquor store across the street or the restaurant next door. You know, it's like all of the local cast of characters, and you walk in after a long shift and they go, hey, and slide you a shot down the bar.
Sweet.
And now we're kicking it at La Rocca's. And so there were a couple nights that I kept getting invited to come kick it after work, and I would be like, I got to drive home. I can't get too drunk. And they were kind of just like, all right. And I was like, yeah, I'm missing out for sure. And I'm not fully immersing. It's like when you're trying to learn a language, you got to like really immerse in the culture.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, why am I sidelining myself from all these fun nights too? So I scrounged up some money that I had been saving for the marriage, and I found a sick ass apartment in North Beach, right above Golden Boy Pizza. I don't know if you've had Golden Boy Pizza, but shout out to Golden Boy Pizza. They make the little squared pizza.
Oh,
Anyway,
yes, I have.
It's fucking bomb.
Damn, that place is over by like No, not White Rapid. What's that one? There's a dance club by there. I'll think of the name.
Dance club.
I think so. Right?
Now I'm trying to think. They got a couple locations. Well, hold on. Anyway,
maybe is it a
in North Beach, a dance club?
I think, or it's like a bar / live music kind of thing.
Tupelo?
It's not like a dance club.
Tupelo? You know? I think I know the one you're talking about.
Tupelo?
Is it on Grant Street? Anyway, all right.
Maybe. I'll look it up later, but
we're way off.
I know the pizza.
Yeah, I was living right above there, which first of all, waking up to the smell of pizza every day, I am just shocked that I'm not 300 pounds.
That's sweet.
And coming home slightly buzzed on multiple nights, the fact that I didn't go to bed with pizza is also equally impressive to me, being a former fat kid.
That sounds tough.
It took a lot of self-restraint. But essentially what a Saturday night would look like is after those like first 3 months of missing out, I was like, fuck this. So I found that apartment in North Beach. I was literally 2 blocks from work, so I could have my little spliff on the walk to work, and I didn't have to worry about driving anywhere. So I was like, fuck it, on the nights that we're going to hang, I can hang. On the nights that I want to go home, I can go home and write. And that was just it. I was like, okay, my life is about comedy now. And I'm going to stop telling myself that it can't be a reality. I'm going to start telling myself that not only can it be a reality, but that it is, and that I can do it, that I can start working on it, and that I'm, everything is incremental progress. And I was just all so exciting. And I was like, I felt like I was a detective that had just made a breakthrough, or like an archaeologist that was uncovering something that had been there, but I didn't know it. And I was just like giving everything more definition and context. And I was just excited. So every day I was fucking whistling on the way to work, smoking my spliff. I'd show up.
So your life really kind of shifted, like turned
It
around almost.
And I think, not just because I put myself in a more positive environment, but I would say it's 2 things. I put myself in a more positive environment, but I put myself in a more positive mindset. And I started believing in myself rather than having doubts and rather than getting in my own way. And I was just like, I don't know, you hear people say you can do the things that you put your mind to, and then it all becomes kind of like a laughing stock or like a cliche, and you stop putting belief and faith into those kinds of sentiments. And you're like, fuck that shit. What is it? The Secret? What am I, Rose Byrne? I'm going to manifest. And, it's easy to start talking shit, but then it's also just as easy to start putting in the work, and it all starts somewhere. And for me, it started with getting a job at the door and just literally working my way inside the club. And I wasn't brave enough to go out and do stand-up yet because I was beaten down by these things that happened in my life, and I didn't feel comfortable showing my personality. And I was just kind of like living in a little shell, looking outside like a hermit crab, getting ready to jump into my next shell and be excited about this next stage. So anyway, what a Saturday night would look like is walking to work with a spliff and a slice of square pizza, showing up, and there being a line of people out. And sometimes we'd show up at La Rocca's early and take a little swig before work. Usually the spliff was enough for me. I'm more of a greenery kind of a guy. But you'd get there, you'd clock in, we'd have a little pre-team meeting where everyone is kind of roasting each other and talking about who's coming tonight, whether or not we think they're funny. And it was very much like salon talk or locker room talk before the game, like, I don't know. It was just, there was a lot of, not necessarily shit talking, but like in the way you would before a big sports game. Like, I think they're going to win. I think they're not. This guy ain't shit, or this one's someone to watch. there would be a lot of that kind of like pregame talk,
Because
and
you had some talent to assess, I guess. Yeah.
or if it was a local showcase, or if it was somebody's, or it would be infighting and in roasting, and it was somebody's birthday, so it became the night to give them shit all night. Or we were all fucked up from the night before, so we were all recovering and trying not to look like we were, not in any state to work. God, there's so many times where people showed up just like on an absurd amount of drugs.
Really?
I mean, there was this one guy.
Just incapable of work?
There was this one guy that I won't name, but this guy would take like, not just like mushrooms or acid or Molly before work, but he'd be like, today I took a little bit of mushrooms, a little bit of acid, and then a tiny bit of Molly.
Oh my
Or
God.
today,
Getting to work like that?
yeah. Or he'd be like, or today I did DMT earlier and now I'm just riding out this acid. And it was like, how are you a human being right now? He would go around and take people's orders. How the fuck do you do that on drugs?
And remember all of them, and that like
Get it right, go through mathematical transactions, return everyone's credit card to the appropriate person, and then also have like at least surface level interactions with them as you're telling them,
Did he ever have issues with that, or you never
hardly ever. I mean, it was
He was
really
on it.
shocking.
That's
This guy was
crazy.
like, I mean, he had it. That was his life, and he had it down to a science. And then he would go into the kitchen, and I don't know if it started by him just saying, "Give me whatever you have left over," but it had become a thing where whenever he was on a lot of drugs, the chef would make him kind of like these monstrosity meals. Like if you ever watched Epic Mealtime, it was kind of like that. But if you just took everything that was on the comedy club menu and put it all in one thing, like, what do you want to we'll give you a pulled pork sandwich, but instead of putting it on the buns, I'm going to put it on our Cobb salad, and then I'm going to put some popcorn shrimp on top of that. And then I'm going to melt mozzarella cheese and pepperoni like I would over our pizza fries, but on top. And so it's just like,
Jeez
what
Louise.
even is that? It's all food, but is it food?
At
And this
least he was
guy
eating, at least he wasn't taking drugs and just starving
I
himself.
know, but then can you imagine, like, I don't know about you, but anytime I've ever taken drugs, I've never wanted to eat anything. I barely want to drink water. Water feels great, but getting me to eat anything is a challenge.
That's a great point.
So to
that
watch
man-
that guy gorge on just like a trough of, oh my God, it was wild. But yeah, so it was just kind of like every day was a different thing as far as one of the staff people was doing something,
Right.
and there were always pranks and contests and just competition and roasts and bullshit going on. And I mean, it was pretty, everyone was fucking everybody there at that point. That was one thing I was pretty glad I flew under the wire with and didn't dip my pen in the company ink there, but everybody was fucking everybody. It was like high school. And there was a lot of drama as well.
Of course, comes hand in hand, right?
Of course. It's like literally the only workplace where workplace romances were like not a necessary component or encouraged, but accepted and ignored and allowed.
It sounds like a TV show so far.
Very much it was. It felt like that. Every night was like the same cast, but a different episode, a different script. And it was just like watching it all happen and then contributing to it as well. And yeah. So, I mean, once your duties are done with the show, for me, a Saturday night would be checking everybody in line. Once everybody is in, about 6 months in, I went from just being a door guy to being one of the managers. One of our managers departed, and I was kind of just like, hey, if you guys need any help until you find anybody more qualified, like, I'm happy to do it. I've been watching what he does. He's had me do a little bit of it, so I can do it until you find somebody more permanent. And it turns out that they didn't need to find anybody more permanent. It was just good enough with me. So
You took the initiative.
take that initiative.
There it is.
Go for the things that you want. Put yourself out there. That's kind of the narrative that I'm trying to get at with this episode. But yeah, I started being one of the managers, and so I had the opportunity to go up and also interface with the comics. And so I'd been playing like everybody's music and shit like that, and now I would go up and talk to them about what they wanted as far as if they needed anything else or their VIPs, the flow of the show, kind of that pregame huddle thing. And then with that, I got to be even like, if I was a fly on the wall in the dojo, now I broke one more level further, and now I was a fly on the wall in the master's chambers.
So you felt more integrated
100%
in the community, in the essence.
100%, because I could be in the lobby as everyone was walking in. I could go out on the street front and see the line around the building and feel that buzz. And then I could be on the showroom floor and feel the excitement of that live stand-up event. But now I could also be tucked away in the back upstairs where only the comedians get to see. Not even the comedy club employees really go in the green room. It's usually just the comics. And so that was like really being one level further on the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tour, you know, to where now it's just me and Charlie in that fucking elevator with the propeller or whatever the hell, when they're flying around depressing ass old Britain and being like, let's get back down to the Chocolate River.
So you were more of an Oompa Loompa that just got special privileges?
I would like to think of myself more as a Charlie than an Oompa Loompa.
Okay, that's fair.
I made it to a later round, but I was an Oompa Loompa. I had to be an Oompa Loompa. I probably was a lead Oompa Loompa, not a Charlie.
Yeah,
you're right.
I don't know. If Comedy Club is Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory,
I was one of the higher up Oompa Loompas. But nonetheless, I mean, I was fucking happy to be that. I was just excited to see how people were before their sets too. The range of emotions that people would go through. Some people were nervous. Some people were confident. Some people weren't thinking about their sets at all. Some people were so consumed with the preparation that it felt like they weren't even there in the moment. Some people would get physically nervous and uncomfortable. Some people would pray. It was so fucking wild to see, like, I don't know, just the variety of approaches to it all and how it affected everybody differently and meant something different to everybody.
That's interesting to see the process.
Yeah, because not everyone was just like stepping up to the plate and winding their bat in that kind of same formulaic way. I don't know. You could see that it meant something different to everybody based on how they approached their set.
How did that affect your view of comedy in the future, you know, wanting to do comedy? Did that kind of give you an idea of how you would perform and
100%.
What you may be doing? And
100%, because you could, like, as I was watching people on this side of the wall preparing for their set and taking it in and taking their breaths or saying their prayers or shooting the shit with their friends or whatever it was, I could see their approach before the set on this side of the wall. I could watch them walk on stage and then walk around that wall and watch the rest of their set with the audience and see how that preparation translated to that performance every single time. And so I noticed that there were times when if you didn't take that shit seriously enough and came in with, it's a funny line with performing. You need to have confidence, but you can't have overconfidence. You need to have an ego, but you also need to have humility. You need to appear interesting and demand the space, but also humble and approachable. So it's like you'd see guys that were like, I fucking, and they go out there and they're like, and it's just it breaks them. And then you'd see people that were like, and then they get out there and they're like, okay. And it's just like, the people. I don't know if that's a weird way to kind of boil it down, but for some people it meant nothing, and then they got nothing, and then for some people it meant everything, and they got everything. You know what I mean? It's like some people treated it with the appropriate respect, and I think there is something to be said for that. Yeah, I saw the difference between a chump and a champ in some ways. People that were contenders, people that were veteran. You know, I don't know. It was so interesting to watch the whole series of events, rather than just that screenshot of the performance. You know, you see everything that goes into it. You see the whole pre-fight documentary, the weigh-ins,
the backside of Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd get to hear their comments coming off the stage too. That part was cool, because then you could see, you see the look in people's eyes. and you feel their weight change. You feel their confidence change. You feel their defeats sometimes when they, are mortally wounded on stage. But yeah, just that whole complete picture. So for me, every day was like a very, very full day, because I would come in having spent all day writing, researching, preparing, working through my own comedic thoughts. And then I would come in and be a comedy club employee for about 2 hours. And then I would become a comedic researcher and like a field researcher and someone that was in deep cover. And
Nice.
And just like feverishly watching what everyone was doing and how everyone was doing it and the minute adjustments and just all the little things and trying to take it all in. And then I would go home, and if we weren't all hanging out, I would just go right back to writing and thinking about how I can process and package and use all this information that I was gathering to, make my first couple of steps in the comedy career and that journey that much easier,
So without getting into your first show, I mean, I know, later we'll talk about that, but did you start doing stand-up while working at Cobb's?
I did.
Okay.
And the talent coordinator and booker for the San Francisco area and Cobb's and the Punchline at that time was like, working at a comedy club, being a comedian, at some point you're going to have to make a decision. And so that kind of was always framed in my mind. But it was weird. It's like you hear all these stories about people at the Comedy Store getting their start as door guys and getting development deals and being given the first spot of the night to go up and like break the ice for the other comics on the show, but also get a little bit of, a feel for it as they go. And so like that existed at that club, but it certainly doesn't exist anywhere else. And you realize that, I guess one thing I should say is that being an employee of a comedy club does not necessarily guarantee you a career in comedy, and it definitely doesn't guarantee you a chance at stage time.
It makes sense. I mean, you said that some people that work there didn't even like comedy.
No.
Right?
And it's almost two different things, where it's like working at a music venue and then being like, hey, you mind if I hop on stage and hit a couple notes? And they're like, no, you're the icy guy. What are you talking about, icy guy?
So icy.
No, the guy was like, at some point you're going to have to make a decision, because either your hours that you're working are going to cut into your hours that you could be performing, or vice versa. And you have to at one point decide what matters to you. Do you want to be, what side of the fence are you on? Are you an employee, or are you, a collaborator, a contributor, a part of the community, a peer? So I knew that going in, and I was like, at some point I'm going to have to depart, but I'm just going to treat this like an internship and learn as much as I can while I can, and just give myself like the best foundation for when I do take my first steps into comedy. And I knew that it wasn't going to be like that far away or like that far off. I was nervous, and I was also like, I don't know how many other people feel like this, but I was like, why me? What do I have? Like, I've lived a life, I have a story, I have a perspective, I have a voice, but like, why me? And why would anyone give a shit? Why? It feels like everyone has the ability to put themselves out there right now. So why would me putting myself out there be any different or anything special? And I just realized that that's like the wrong school of thought. And if you're thinking like that, you're never going to take flight. But also it wasn't about knowing that right then, like I was listening to Elon Musk talking about Tesla, and you could say that the biggest impact that he's probably going to end up having will be with SpaceX, but he wasn't thinking about either of those companies. He was originally wanting to get into energy efficiency in batteries, and it wasn't even about. It was about electrical vehicles, and it was about all these things, but it was different initially. The context in the long run was all the same, and you can see how one decision leads to another, but the answer to that question of what are you doing right now would have been entirely different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's more of a feeling for yourself than it is like a worked out trail journey that you're going on.
Yeah.
It's like, I know that I need to go this way because this trail feels right, and you don't know where you're going to end up, but you can see all these things. You can see, how you imagine the future,
Yeah.
and how ambitious you're going to be, and then you have to decide if it feels right or not. And you're saying, why me? And
Sure,
that's
sure.
not.
And that is like, one of the harsher realities is that at one point you do have to, like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you want to be respecting the art, this can apply to anything that you're doing, but in this instance, we're talking about comedy. So if you want to be respecting the art of comedy and also respecting your fellow comedians as far as like everyone's time, and like the equality of opportunity and the fact that there's only, a finite amount of stage time, you can make a new show, but why take up a spot if it doesn't mean the world to you when you're taking it from someone who it might mean the world to, So at some point you do have to have a discussion with yourself about, am I the right person for this? Why me? Can I justify that? Do I have the talent, the drive, the motivation, or if nothing else, the willingness to want to get better and to want to leave a lasting impact and contribute to this art form?
You answered those questions though.
Yeah, but it was like the whole thing for me was I was thinking about it the wrong way to begin with. It's like, it's not something that you have to justify right away. It's like we had this conversation when we were starting the podcast where it's like, why does it feel like you have to it's like the one kind of art form you have to justify, where it's almost like telling someone you're going to be a parent and they're like, oh, really, you? I mean, I remember you when you were doing fucking keg stands in high school. I mean, you're a piece of shit. And so if you're trying to justify anything, there's going to be 1,000 reasons you could say no, but what about the one reason where, why not you? Or where the one scenario where it works out better than you ever expected. But also like the Bob Marley clip that we played in the last episode, there's a little voice inside you that's guiding you towards something, because you know you better than you, or better than anyone else. You know you better than anyone else. And so that voice that's talking to you was talking to me about comedy. It was talking to me about how I should pay attention to what I just did in my life, which was going through something very, very painful and then trying to use comedy as a tool to not just escape it and ignore it, but harness it as armor and use it to transform the effect that those events had on me. And that voice inside me was telling me to pay attention to that action and realize that maybe you can do that for other people. And maybe the way you just healed yourself, you could help other people heal. Even if it's not like overtly fixing their problems or like talking about something that specifically happened to them, you could make yourself the scapegoat, and be self-deprecating and talk about the bullshit that's going on in your life so they don't have to worry about the bullshit that's going on in theirs. I'm rambling too much about comedy philosophy, but this was all the kind of thing that I was furthering my exposure to, and then like just deepening my love for comedy. I had understood it as something that moved me and entertained me, but I didn't really understand the power that it could have for everybody and for the world. And it's like some people don't even realize that it's healing them and repairing them as it's doing it. They just think that they're laughing at something funny, and they don't realize that their perspective is being kind of like surgically repaired or shifted or altered. And there's real power and real potential. And I was like, you know what? I don't give a shit if I don't need to be the best at this. I just want to be able to tap into that power at least a couple times in my life. Obviously, I want to be great. I want to work hard at this because I love comedy and I want to do right by comedy. And I want to, just like I'm talking about that power, I want to see that actualized, and I want to try to wield that if I can.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend in that space where you were foot in both worlds?
Like 2.5 years. No, 2 years. Yeah. Well, let's see. I think about 2 years. I started stand-up December 19th, 2017. And and I started working there in March 2017. I left New Year's 2020. So I had spent like two years-ish doing both. And that was really fun too, but it's like, at that point in my career, it was like when I had to be at work to be a manager, was like, I couldn't just call out like I could as an employee, or like, say, hey, don't book me for that shift. Don't put me on schedule because I want to go out and do stand-up. I had to be there for pretty much every weekend because it was like,
So originally you wanted to be a part of the community. You
Yes.
spent time looking in, you got integrated,
yes.
and then you needed to tear yourself away from that in order to go and become a part of the comedy community.
Exactly. I had gotten closer to the community, but now I needed to, get out of the vessel that brought me there. And I wanted to do that amicably because I love Cobb's and I never wanted to, like, honestly, there was a minute where I was like, I could do this forever, just this job. But then you don't want to, I didn't want to just do that job. It was like, that was fooling myself because I don't know if anyone else's brain is structured like mine, but when you have anxiety and depression and doubts and all these things, your brain will give you 1,000 outs. When you're trying to follow something that really means something to you and that is hard and scary, your brain will give you 1,000 outs and say, well, you could just do this, or you could just be happy with that. You could just be happy that you got this far. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I knew as soon as that question was presented to me about, at some point you're going to have to make a choice. I knew which side of the fence I was on. I never wanted to be a comedy club manager or a comedy club owner. I wanted to make people laugh and to be on the side of the war of negativity of the people that were wielding comedy, to fight that war against negativity. So yeah, I knew that at some point I was going to have to make a decision. And it was like, I had become a manager to help get me closer to the comedy community and being able to interact in the green room with comics, to be able to ask for advice or ask for guidance from both, national headliners and also local comedians that were headlining all the local bar shows and being on the new talent showcase and all that shit. And, the people that were just a couple laps ahead of me, I mean, a lot of laps ahead of anyone that's just starting, but, so it was all about getting closer to that. But I knew that it was all a means to an end, and that eventually there was an exit strategy and an expiration date. And what started happening was, okay, so you talk about what were my Saturday nights like. I never quite finished that question as far as what happens after the show. You watch all the people leave, and they're just like fucking 50 pounds lighter. If they were arguing on their way in about the parking or being late, they're laughing about this fucking bullshit they just heard and quoting some bit and just leaving together arm in arm into the night, closer than they were when they came in. And I was like, that's it. That's the life. That's what you want to do. You want to have that impact on the world. And so I was like, okay, target acquired, mission accepted. The Saturday nights used to be that I would want to go out with the staff and party, because like that was the most fun part of being on the island of Misfit Toys, is that you were on that island alone. There were no supervisors. Even the managers and the heads were misfits themselves, and so as soon as the work was over, the play would begin, and we would turn on the speakers super loud and play music and make our own drinks at the bar. And then when we couldn't stay there anymore, we'd go to La Rocca's next door. And then when we couldn't stay at La Rocca's because they closed down, we'd go back to my apartment and spread out my mattress and my box spring on the floor so we could all fucking sleep and just, live that life. And so for a long time, I was really just enjoying being on that island with the toys and the other people that were seeking the same kind of thing that I was, even if they were seeking different things, if that makes sense. But anyhow,
Yeah, I hear that.
one day I knew I had to make a decision. So the Saturdays started becoming this tug of war between my responsibilities at work and with Cobb's to my responsibility to myself. It felt like to want to go out and get booked, because, you can like get by in your first year of comedy, doing like Mondays and Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Sundays and like all the off days. But if you really want to like test yourself in front of an audience that is there for a comedy show and not just like at a coffee shop or at a bar after hours, like if you really want to be in front of dedicated comedy audiences that can discern between good comedy and bad comedy, you got to be going out on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and getting booked on like the main shows in the city, whatever city you're starting in. So I was like, all right, you know, I love this job and it presents a lot of opportunities for me as far as networking and learning and research, but I never get to put it all in practice, or it's too few and far between. Like I remember at one point, this whole discussion in the comedy community about if you're not going out 5 times a week, you're not a real comedian. Shouts out to James Moara. But it like, you know, kind of put us all on blast in a fun way about motivating us and getting us thinking about our numbers. But that's not, you know, necessarily true. You could be a real comedian and go out as many times as you need to go out to improve, as long as you're making people laugh and objectively, you know, delivering good comedy and being successful overtly in that way, you know.
Right.
Comedy is nice. It's very much kind of a meritocracy where it's easy to understand when you're succeeding or failing because people are either laughing or they're not. So, you know, there was, okay. Sorry, I just got a message from my girlfriend.
So I have one kind of, I have one question for you.
I was just going somewhere, but then I totally got derailed.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Just wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
But just one question, because you talked about how you got to more than just have shoulder rubs with some pretty, you know, influential comedians. And I just wanted to ask, you know, who were some of those biggest influences and who were some of those people who helped you make that decision to tear away from being integrated as a supporter of the comedy community?
Well, that's kind of where I was just heading.
Okay.
But that gives us purpose to talk about this specifically. It's tough because, like, I don't want to just name drop a bunch of people, but it's not like I'm saying that I'm fucking best friends with these people and have, you know, and that they come over on the 4th of July and we all, you know, have our Polish sausages and drink beers and talk about the good old days.
Got the Christmas cad.
Yeah, no, it's like, you know, these are people that were very kind and generous with their time. And, you know, if in that whole, you know, teach a man to fish analogy, it doesn't take that long to teach a man to fish. If you're a really effective communicator, you could teach a man to fish in one sentence, kind of a thing. So it was like, not every conversation I had, some nights I was very, very lucky and spoiled, to be honest, as a comedy fan, but also as someone who was a young budding comedian, to have that kind of time with those kinds of people. It was like a real, real blessing. But not all of it was like that. So, I mean, okay, in a nutshell, there were a couple people that stood out for sure. I got to shout out every single local comedian that came through Cobb's ever. Every single one of those fucking people made me laugh on some of my darkest days and were there for me when they didn't even know they were being there for me, because that's just what comedy fucking is. But they also would welcome me into the community by me. Well, you know, it was just like, I don't know. They made me feel a part of the evening, if nothing else. That night, you know, we were all in it together, and going forward from that, you would develop relationships with these people individually, to where, you know, you're all hanging out in the green room together. And I don't know. I think it kind of like, I feel like a comic can feel a comic too. I don't want to brag about that or feel like they knew that I was going to be a comic, but I didn't make any secrets about wanting to be a comic. But for a long time, it was hypothetical, and I was like, you know, one day. And all these local guys would look at me like, it's cute, you know? And and I was kind of like a little brother character to them, I guess. But for me, it was, let's see, two big ones stand out to me. One was one night we had Doug Stanhope come through on Tuesday, Wednesday. It was so random. He never did like regular weekends. He would always come through on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, and it was like a weird, rainstorm that would come through in the middle of the week, and then you'd fucking wake up on Thursday and the chairs on the ceiling and all the windows are broken and someone's got a dick spray painted on their ass. But it was so fucking fun, and he was a big partier, and so there was a lot of like the comedy community camaraderie that night. But it was his feature act, a man named Brett Erickson, who I fucking love, and was going to headline my show at Cobb's before the pandemic shut everything down. I was going to have the 1 year anniversary of my show at Cobb's, and this guy that helped me so much without even really knowing it, I was going to have him come headline. But anyway, one day we'll do that again. But anyhow, this guy Brett Erickson is fucking hilarious, and in between his sets and in between, the different shows on the different nights, I'm talking to him, and he and his wife just like took a liking to me. They were fun people. I was a fun guy that night. We were all, excited and having a good time together.
That night.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
a fun guy just for that night.
I nailed it that night. I stuck the landing. But yeah, we were just having a good time, and he asked me, how long I've been doing stand-up, and I was like, I'm not a comic yet. And he's like, yet? And I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it for so long, and I've always wanted to do it, but I'm just not quite ready yet. So one day. And he was the first guy to really be like, that one day shit is a bunch of bullshit. There's nothing wrong with planning for the future, but you gotta get out of your own way, and you just gotta get out there and start doing it. And I was like, well, he's like, are you writing? And I was like, yeah, I'm writing. And he's like, well, then you got to get on stage I was like, I'm writing, but I don't know how to take what I'm writing and imagine how it's going to come across on stage, because I had never performed anything. I'd performed in front of my friends. I'd done like public speaking classes and delivered speeches and presentations, but I wasn't to me, it was, you rarely understand a thing until you do it. And that's what he was saying to me in a nutshell, is he was like, you're writing, you don't write for the stage. Your stage time informs your writing. And so he's like, of course, write a couple funny ideas down, have a game plan going in, but it's going to be the things that happen on stage that are the most revealing, and where you really learn what makes people laugh, what works, what doesn't. And then you go back to your notebook and start improving from there. But that way you're taking a step of progress every single time, and not just sitting in your notebook thinking, why me? Doing all that justifying, saying, well, I better be fucking funny before I get out there. And instead you're saying, why not me? And you're just taking that leap of faith, and then
Interesting.
it's just tightening the wheels and the nuts and the bolts and making sure that everything is smoother going forward from there. But fail early, fail often. That was another piece of advice I got from Andrew Santino. I love Andrew Santino, and he was like, comedy, when you get started, is kind of like stubbing your toe. And it's like, when you first stub your toe as a kid, it hurts so bad, and it's this big whole fucking thing, and then you're always afraid of stubbing your toe. But then, like, I don't know, the longer life goes on, stubbing your toe is not that big of a deal. And that's kind of like what a bad set feels like, is like, when you first start, it's like this big thing, and you're like, I'm a fucking failure, I bombed. And then he's like, but over time, it's like, it's just stubbing your toe. And the great thing about comedy is that every set ends. And it's not like this eternity that you're trapped in forever, where I'm a failure, and you're just floating in that mirror prison that they used to lock all of Superman's enemies into. You're just frozen in time as a failure. But he's like, every set ends, and you go back to your notebook after that, and you are given an opportunity to come back the next day even better. And so it was a lot of this, this sentiment about getting out of my own way, and then just starting the process of failure, so that I could also start the process of growth.
Not being afraid to fail.
100%.
Important. And
just putting yourself out there. And like, the sooner you start doing that, the sooner you can start finding out who you are. Not just like personally, philosophically, but also like who you are on stage and what you're trying to say. Finding your voice is a term that you'll often hear in comedy, but just like, finding your legs. So those were probably the two biggest conversations for me. I mean, I've had other really nice conversations with Andrew too, but that was for me the first big conversation that he and I had, and I really appreciated that. And then Brett Erickson just fucking pushed me out of the boat and said swim, and I liked that, and I appreciated that, and I needed it. And then Ari Shafir one time broke down joke writing for me, and he was kind of, because I was like, you know, how do you really develop a bit? Or I was like, how do you organize your set and write it? Like, I asked him like 3 questions at once. I was like, how do you write a joke? How do you organize your set? And how do you like organize orchestrate a bit and all these things? And he just like, it was so funny because it's such like a green move looking back, because I asked him this like fucking 5 minutes before he was going on stage. And so it's like, he's like, fucking kid, I got other things to think about right now. But we had been having this conversation and about comedy and about getting started, and he's asking how it was going, and I was like, you know, I'm just working on my joke writing. And I was like, what's your philosophy when it comes to joke writing? And he drew this little street with a little cul-de-sac on it. And he's like, the street is your set and the cul-de-sacs are your bits. And he's like, you know, when you get started, your set is just going to be that straight street. But the more time you have, the more cul-de-sacs you can add. And those cul-de-sacs are little topics or little, you know, kind of thought lines or thread lines or tangents or whatever. You go down those, you can explore them, develop them, fill them out, and then they become kind of like mile markers down the street, where it's like you pass this cul-de-sac, you know that one's next, and you just kind of work your way through all these cul-de-sacs to work your way down the street. And I was like, that's fucking interesting.
He actually drew that out for you?
Yeah.
On a little piece of paper? Or like
yeah. And like the 5 minutes before he was going on stage, and then I just like folded it up in my pants and went back downstairs and tried to act like I didn't just have a conversation with the headliner.
Did you keep that little piece of paper?
Yeah, it's in my dresser at home.
We should put that up in the studio.
Frame it. It's like my
my
first dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, the biggest thing I could say is that all of these people took time to lend a hand down to me, you know, whether it was headliners, whether it was managers of comedians, whether it was local comedians, whether it was staff members. It became so much more collaborative than I expected it to be. I really thought it was like, and I don't know, that's not everybody's experience, and I'm not going to act like it's all fun and games like that all the time and that everyone wants to see you win. And there's a lot of jealousy and competition and kind of like safeguarding of secrets. And that's unfortunate. But it's not all that. And if I could say anything, it would be, you know, get out of your way and find your community and believe in yourself. But yeah, I mean, those are like some of the biggest defining moments in my life that I didn't realize were happening as they were happening. But I kind of like, I don't know. You ever had those moments in your life where things are changing and you kind of know?
It's a feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely feel that something inside you different. The perspective has changed.
Yeah. And it just felt right. I felt like I was in the right place. I felt like I was doing the right thing. And, yeah, even more so, because it meant something to me, and I could see what happened to people who didn't respect it, who did respect it. I could see all different angles, and I just really got to learn a lot about the whole kind of, ecosystem, I guess. I'm running out of words, so we must be out of time.
Well, I think it's really cool that, you kind of threw yourself in the ocean of comedy and people taught you how to swim. You know, there's other people swimming in the ocean of comedy, and they taught you how to do the freestyle.
Yeah.
The backstroke, or at least gave you pointers on how to do it
100%.
while you were figuring it out on your own, right?
Yeah, there was a guy, Steve Fury, a friend of mine who is a big up-and-comer in L.A. and a paid regular at the Comedy Store, and I had him headline my first Talking After Set show at Cobb's. But he was like, this industry is funny because people just kind of, at certain points that are unexpected, lend their hand down to you and lift you up. And it doesn't happen when you're expecting it. But to those lucky people that position themselves correctly, it does happen. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing an appropriate job selling this too, because saying that you could just show up at a comedy club, say I want to be a comedian, and that a bunch of people are gonna fucking line up down the street to help you make that happen, definitely is not the case. And I had people tell me that I was gonna fail. I had people laugh at me. I had people fuck with me. I had people pull pranks on me and try to sabotage my sets that I did at, it's like people will both sides of the coin will be revealed to you. You will see people wearing both faces, both masks, those that are smiling at you and those that are frowning at you. And I would be remiss to not mention that it took a lot of hard work and determination and not letting people convince me that no was the only answer, And to anyone out there that's listening to this and trying to derive some sort of kind of vicarious experience from this and learn something from it, it would be in a position to receive help from the universe when it's presented to you. Don't ignore it, and acknowledge it with gratitude and positivity. But believe in yourself and really really push yourself, because there were a lot of nights where it felt like the wrong decision, and it felt like I was a failure, and it felt like I wasn't making progress. And I'm not sitting here now in a position to tell you that it all worked out and that it was happily ever after, but I've made a life as a comedian for myself now, and I got shows this week, and I got a podcast, and I can say that I've been around the country doing shows, and I've met some of the people that I idolize, and that I've also been able to just wield that power. I've felt that those moments that I set out wanting to feel, where you see people before the show all fucking pouty and pissed at the world, and then you get up there and say just a couple words that inject your personality and philosophy, and you're able to shoot that positivity fucking out of your fingertips and your gonads and all your pores or whatever the fuck, and breathe that into the universe, and it fucking feels good. And I think that you get that feeling when you're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing with your life. So I don't know, without rambling anymore, listen to that voice inside of your head that we were talking about on that last episode there. Listen to that voice, find your thing, find your calling, find your island of misfit toys, find those people that believe in you, find that cause that you believe in, and that power that you want to wield, and be confident in your ability to wield it one day. And I don't know, I feel like I want to keep talking. I'm rambling because I want to keep talking about it because I miss Cobb so much. But we'll talk about this more in further episodes, and we'll wrap this up there. But man, I had such a great time there. And shouts out to Lauren and Kyle and Cody and Marcus and all my other managers and all of the fucking staff members, all of my security staff, the box office employees, all the bar staff, the bartenders, servers, everybody, the cooks. Oh my God, I miss our fucking food. They used to make me the sickest burger there. One of the best burgers I've ever had in my life at Cobb's Comedy Club, and I don't give a fuck what you say.
Really?
All right?
Damn, I got to try me that burger.
I got fat there, all right? I got fat at Cobb's Comedy Club. Oh, shout out to Nick, our chef, too. My grandpa used to eat patty melts all the time. It was his favorite thing, and he added a patty melt to the secret menu for me. It would make me a patty melt every once in a while.
Man, that's a staple.
Ah, man.
Left a little staple on there then.
The Biggie patty melt. Order it at Cobb's next time. See what happens. Anyway, I don't know. I'm trying to think of where to wrap this up, but we'll talk more about that whole journey at Cobb's. But it was like,
as somebody sitting here, hearing that story, I thought it's really cool, and I know that people listening to this will probably have some thing that they're afraid to undertake.
Yeah.
Right? Something that they really want to do, and
if nothing else, that would be what I would say. And again, I'm not coming at you from someone who figured it all out and did it all. I'm still very much in the process of digging my feet up through the snow and trying to make progress up the mountain. but you could just start climbing at any time, you know? And that's kind of like all it took at the end of the day was just wanting to get out there and start climbing and stop thinking about all the ways that I could fall down and embarrass myself and slide comically down the face of the mountain and back into town and have everyone say, yeah, that's why you don't climb. But, you know, just stop thinking about all the reasons why not and start thinking about how great it could be. Not even just at the peak, but at every little step of progress where you can look back and think about how far you came. So anyway, yeah. Thank you so much to everyone at Cobb's. I love you guys. I miss you guys. And believe in yourselves, you fucking rascals. Have some fun. Go support your local comedy clubs. Tip your staff. God, there were so many nights where those tips changed my friends' lives. Where they're, you know, we're all pretty much, you know, derelicts at that job, living rent check to rent check, and there are some fucking interesting, good ass, just wholly good people at your local comedy club. I guarantee it. So go hang out there a little bit more when things reopen. Do your best to support live comedy any way you can, because there's a bunch of people that want to sell you out on a bunch of bullshit, tell you lies, and have you live in fear, and we just want to make you laugh. So get out there and check it out if you can, whether it's in a park, a drive-in, a parking structure, a kid's party, or just on Zoom now because it's sad, but whatever way you can. Tell somebody you appreciate them making you laugh, and go follow your dreams. We're not going to get any other clips or any other stuff this time, but hey, we do want to hear from the people. We want to hear from the people of Earth. So if you have anything you want us to talk about in future episodes, if you have any funny clips, any funny stories, if you need any advice on things that are going down in your life right now, if you want to share where you're at in your personal journey, and even just fucking have someone to talk to, reach out. peopleofearthpod@gmail.com. That is peopleofearthpod@gmail.com. And you can find us at the People of Earth Podcast on Instagram. And as Brody Stevens would say, keep that energy positive. Let's give a good positive push out there. Anyway. All right, you motherfuckers. Keep some sunshine on your face. We'll see you next time.
Good morning, people of the earth.
We interrupt our program at the request of the White House. This is a test.
Some very strange events have been taking place recently.
The emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. Furnishing news, official information, and instruction as soon as possible.
Is there a point to all this? Let's find a point. The world is like a ride at an amusement park.
This is only a test.
This is just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love.
A small group of warriors have taken up the fight on your behalf.
It's been activated to keep you informed.
The Earth is where we make our stand.
You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful.
People of the earth.
People of Earth.
People of earth.
If you are not tuned to a station furnishing information for your area,